Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 66 of the Lord Ninja Choke MMA Picks podcast. As always, I'm joined by Will in the UK and Josh in Australia. I'm Dom, I'm based in the US. Let's get into this card. Upcoming this week is UFC Baku. This is the fight card, top to bottom. It's headlined by Rafael Fiziev and Manuel Torres. And it's a pretty decent card. Not like a lot of name value, but we're going to be breaking down the three fights outlined in red. And outside of those fights, guys, anything you want to highlight? We've got some exclamation marks on the screen. Maybe Josh, you want to talk through those?
Yeah, the exclamation marks are normally my way to indicate that I feel like there's a potential upset coming. So maybe not so much of the Michal Magomedov part. Dom might have an argument there. I'll leave that up to him. But for the Almakhan Johnson fight, I think that given Johnson's record of upsetting fights, I think his record is like 4 wins to 3 losses when it comes to being a dog. I feel like he is in like prime territory to create an upset here. I'm not too sold on Almakhan dominating Johnson when Johnson, during his whole career, has been the one at pretty much improving his takedown defense over and over again each fight, just so he can negate these kinds of opponents. And given that Almakhan is the pure wrestler, let's just call it that, really. I feel like Johnson knows what to do after the first round. So like I expect a high output from Almakhan in the first round, but then Johnson should find his range and find his timing with the punches in the second and third round, potentially leading to a KO. Maybe not, but either way, there is a potential there for an upset. And for the Oleksiejczuk fight, I feel like the upset for Fajeda is there strictly because of the disgusting punching power of Fajeda early on. I mean, he used to be known as like a first round fighter, but nowadays that kind of myth is broken, and he is a fairly durable fighter. But I do suspect that Oleksiejczuk is a more efficient fighter in 3 rounds, and he can overwhelm Fajeda after the first round. So yeah, those two fights, the Almakhan Johnson and the Oleksiejczuk Fajeda fight, I expect an upset there. That's my warning. Maybe, I mean, I think I was wrong last time, so maybe I'll be wrong again. But I want to bounce back to Dom before Will has a say here. I apologize, Will. The Magomedov and Fajeda fight, you pointed that out before. Do you have good
Yeah, no,
call?
I mean, it's nothing major. I just I think Magomedov probably rolls here. I mean, it's he can't fight, I think, in the US, right, because of the one eye thing. So it's more just a price sensitivity thing. Like he's minus 400 now. Just check the odds, and Pereira is plus 300. So I think it's just one of those things like to be wary of, like with the price being like that. You've got a one-eyed fighter with no ground game whatsoever. Like he's been taken down. So you said the first round thing. I'm thinking just lay and pray for Michel Pereira. Would we be like overtly surprised if Michel Pereira shot a takedown and just sort of laid on Shara for 3 rounds? Oh, maybe a little bit surprised, but it's just he has a path there. I think everyone who has any grappling ability. Do I trust Michel Pereira to enact a grappling game plan? No, I'm not betting on Michel Pereira. Just sort of like for me, it was just interesting, the price, basically. Like he's a huge favorite, as he has been in all his fights, and some of them have been a little bit closer than the line suggested. I remember, not the Oleksiejczuk fight, but I think the Marc-Andre Barrio, I think he got hurt in that one. The scorecards were unanimous, so I guess the judges didn't feel it was significant, but I do remember that was a bit closer than the scorecard suggested, than the odds indicated. And here, there's a chance that this is closer if Michel Pereira can get takedowns, and that's a big if. But I just think Michel Pereira has that kind of high ceiling. He's quite athletic, but yeah, he's like pretty washed at this stage, and I wouldn't trust him as an underdog. It's just more sort of, it's just a red flag for me. Yeah, what do you think, Will?
Well, I have a bet on Shara, and I basically hear everything you just said. It was more a case of I knew I wanted to use Navajo Sterling in a parlay last week, and was looking ahead to this card. And I mean, yeah, it kind of sums up my general view on this card. Like, there's some interesting fights when you look into them, but it's just a collection of names of people that I don't really know much about off the top of my head. So, you know, blind betting last week, it was very difficult. So I did just take the Shara one because I just thought like the levels of the levels on the striking should be really clear. Shara's lack of finishing for the most part kind of does add a bit of concern because yes, it gives Michal time to find a way into the fight with the wrestling, but also I don't really know if Michel Pereira can be considered a wrestler. Obviously, that's not what you said, but I always feel like if somebody needs to use the non-plan A method of winning a fight, like how reliable and consistent are they? And whilst Shara is not a great defensive wrestler grappler at all, I imagine he's probably going to do more with the time he gets on the feet than Michel will do with the time he gets on the mat, if he even gets any. So for me, I think minus 350. Like, it's a gross price tag, I know, but like I don't think you could go much lower before people would really see value in that. Like I think the true line probably should be like minus 300 anyway. Like 75% win for Shara sounds perfectly reasonable to me. So that was why I took it. Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you're gonna be price averse to a minus 350 or anything steeper, then fine. Can't blame you at all. But yeah, aside from that, like the rest of the card is, yeah, as I said, names just don't jump off the page for me. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just becoming more of a casual as time goes by. But like Almabayev, Charles Johnson looks fun. I like Sadikov. Yeah, like literally nothing else jumps out at me. They're just names of people I'm aware are UFC fighters, but I couldn't pull up a memory of anything that they've done inside the cage. But that might just be me being old. So yeah, not that excited for the card, but you know, we move.
Yeah, I'm not that excited. I think I was thinking about this and thinking like, from a watching perspective, I don't even know I'll be able to watch it, to be honest. It's one of those, you know, it's Saturday, right? Sometimes you've got things to do. But I kind of like the venue of Baku. I don't know. I've never been to those countries in that area. So I was like, I'd quite like to go to Baku. This would be a good reason. So maybe in the future, it's something to consider, just because it's kind of exotic to me. But with that said, let's take a look at the main event, and Will's going to break this one down for us.
Yeah, if you're a Formula One fan, Baku definitely looks like an exciting place to go to. But anyway, yes, Rafael Fiziev versus Manuel Torres is our main event here. I mean, based off of my introduction of not seeming overly keen or, you know, well versed in this card, I think it's kind of fitting I just take what I would consider to be the low-hanging fruit of analysis, which is basically this fight. It's kind of just a tale of two confusing like gaps in knowledge, I guess. Really, I was going to say red flags, but I feel like maybe that's a bit unfair to them both. Rafael Fiziev is, you know, a guy that we know and love. He's a top 10 striker in the division. He's always been very much respected, and you know, what more can you say? Like, he's currently 1-4, I think, in his last 5, which is obviously, you know, a skid and one that doesn't look good. But when you consider 2 of the losses have come against Justin Gaethje, who, you know, used a similar game plan the second time. He's also the bloody champion at the moment. Jesus Christ. But, you know, that was one of the losses. There was also the fluke injury against Gamrot. That doesn't mean anything. And then he did have the one legitimate KO loss to Mauricio Ufi, which was the last fight that he had. So, you know, it's kind of unfortunately like sort of the cherry on top that he did have a legitimate KO loss in his last one. So people could be forgiven for sort of looking at Fiziev's record and going, is this guy washed? Is he declining? Like, it wouldn't be surprising, would it, to see Fiziev never perform again at the levels that he was prior to that skid. But at the same time, there's so many asterisks, and like, you know, losing to Houfi by KO is no big deal. Like, I don't blame you. It's happened to a lot of guys, and it'll happen to a lot more. So to see Fiziev roll back the years and look like somebody before that 1-5 record would also not be surprising. So it's basically a coin toss as to what exactly we're getting out of him, if that makes sense. And then on the flip side with Manuel Torres, you know what you're getting, but you also don't know what you're getting, in that he is literally just a round one finisher. All 7 of his UFC or Dana White Contender Series fights have ended in round 1, and I think he's 6-1 there of the results. So super chaotic guy. There's a lot to like from a fan perspective there. The guy just bites down on the mouthpiece and says, let's put on a show. And that kind of matches up perfectly with everything I just said about Fiziev. You need to ask questions of Fiziev, given he's just been KO'd himself and he's on a skid. Manuel Torres is absolutely going to be the guy to ask the right questions. But what if he doesn't get his round 1 KO? Then the questions completely flip to the other side, and it will be Fiziev asking questions of him, because we've seen Fiziev fight 15 minutes. He's not got the best cardio in the world, but he's a competent minute winner who can, shut out a 15-minute decision. He's done that many times. He did it against Bahamondes quite recently. And we have no idea if Manuel Torres can do that. Absolutely no idea. He could be he could have 25 minutes of cardio. He could have 25 minutes of cardio where he's dangerous for 25 minutes and he's just like the Ngannou of the lower weight classes. He could have 25 minutes but be a shit minute winner and get absolutely destroyed by Fiziev. He could gas out within 5 minutes and 50 seconds. We literally don't know because we just haven't seen it. So that's where the conclusion for this fight gets very tricky, and that's where the breakdown kind of has to end. I mean, you could go into more technical details on this one, but I'm fully a believer that when you come across high variance strikers, there's nothing you can really do to have an accurate prediction unless you're going really deep into like tendencies and sort of stylistic choices. There are so many variables at play when a KO happens in the UFC. I say this all the time, and I therefore just, if I know a fight is very likely to end by KO quite early, I just don't have any confidence in the opinion that I take, if that makes sense. So yeah, you either land on one of two sides. You either look at the record of Fiziev and it doesn't worry you, and you think the cream rises to the top because the other guy is untested. Or you look at the Torres side, have a lot of respect for his dangerousness and finishing ability, and then look at Fiziev's record and think there is a lamb being sent to the slaughter. This fight is lined exactly at pick'em, and I think that makes complete sense. So for me, from a betting perspective, I personally think maximize the price tag and go for Torres round 1. If this is truly a pick'em, as the odds intended to be, Fiziev could win early, he could win middle, he could win late, he could win a decision, or he could win by KO. There's too many options there. You can't really sort of maximize the narrative. You kind of just have to bet Fiziev's money line, a reasonable around plus 100, but it's only plus 100 and you think it might be a coin flip. Whereas with Manuel Torres, you can get like plus 275, plus 300 for his round 1, which round 1 or 2 therefore probably is like plus 175. It's just a way of like, if you're going to take a risk on a coin flip, you might as well make sure that you don't have coin flip odds, is what I'm saying. And I know you're obviously trimming the fat and there are risks. And if Torres wins in round 3 or wins a decision, but like, do you really think Torres is going to win a decision? No, that's not. I don't think anyone is picking Manuel Torres round 3, so you might as well just lower your stake, but have a punt on a bigger price tag. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll probably have a bet on Torres to win in round 1, maybe win in rounds 1 or 2. I haven't actually calculated the odds, but yeah, it's a coin flip of a fight. So my lack of conviction is apparent there. So does anyone else have anything that's a little bit more definitive, or are you agreeing with me that this is kind of a Jesus take the wheel type spot? Josh, you go first. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I agree for the most part of what you said there, Will, but I kind of want to, for lack of a better term, be a prick. See, I've got Torres via KO there. I agree to that extent, but I do not think it's going to be a first round KO. Now, Will mentioned that, Torres is predominantly a first round finisher, but there are a few things there that I want to kind of agree or disagree with, He did go 3 rounds against a 21-year-old prospect back in the day, back in 2018, named what's his face and shit. Enrique Gonzalez. It was a beatdown Grand Prix, which is one of those long, extensive events that go on back in those regional promotions. But anyway, I feel like even though Torres does have a lot of first round KOs, it's not due to his style, but perhaps due to his opponent's lack of defense. Like it's one of those like perfect matches made in heaven for his whole career. And I understand that Fiziev has taken a lot of damage in this time, and he is pretty much a walking punching bag at this rate. I mean, we've seen him go 6 rounds against Gaethje and absorb about 185 significant strikes. But Fiziev is technically a master when it comes to kickboxing. Like he is one of the most intelligent strikers in the division. I feel like he knows what to expect when it comes to Torres. I mean, all of his highlights are out there, so obviously Fiziev and his team have a game plan. And if you look at Fiziev's last few fights, there's been one thing that kind of makes me think that this fight's going to go into the second and potentially third round. Like I'm not saying we're going to see a decision fight. If we do, then it's going to be either a spectacle or boring because both fighters respect each other. But I do expect Fiziev to blast the body of Torres. I mean, that's what he did well against Gaethje. He knew that Gaethje had power in his hands, and in order to nullify that power, you got to go for the body kicks. I mean, it works well against Gaethje throughout his whole career. I mean, whenever Gaethje loses fights or whenever he gets hurt, it's pretty much mostly stemming from the body. We saw Topuria do it just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, the body shots to Gaethje are obviously a vulnerability. Anyway, for Torres, the same thing could be said here, potentially. If Torres doesn't counter the kicks with punches to the face, that is. I am a little bit cautious about the first round. That's all I'm pretty much saying here. I firmly believe Torres is more than prepared for a 3-round fight. But it all stems from how he performs in those first 5 minutes. Like this is all speculation. I don't know what he's gonna do. Maybe he's gonna look for another first round finish and then maybe ask for a title shot or some shit like that. But given that Fiziev has been technically sound when it comes to his striking defense and his overall kickboxing knowledge, I think he can survive that first round. The only concern I have for Fiziev here is him being the hometown fighter. He is. I mean, I think he's a hometown fighter. I mean, I know it says Kyrgyzstan there, but I think he is Azerbaijani. So, given that he has the crowd behind him, he could forego the smart choice of raising the guard and being ready for the Torres torrent of punches, and just go for the war that the crowd wants. But I feel like, given that Fiziev is still in a position to bounce back in his career, maybe he's going to be maybe he's going to be defensively capable enough to not get finished in the first round. I mean, all we're asking for is like 5 minutes of Fiziev not dying here. Well, not me. Sorry, well, me. But I obviously have Torres winning here. It's not going to be a first round KO in my opinion. I would be shocked if it was, but I'm a big fan of Fiziev, so I'm giving Fiziev some maneuverability here. But I reckon eventually Torres will find the KO, and yeah, it's gonna be a fun fight to watch, and a sad one to watch. And whenever I look at Fiziev in that photo there that you can see there, I can't help but think of that JD Vance meme where JD Vance has a long hair and is like got that morphed face. It looks exactly like that. It gets me all the time. Anyway, that's my my take on it. I think Torres gets the finish after the first round, but yeah, if it's a first round KO, then holy shit, that's nuts for Torres. Dom, what do you got?
Well, I think you kind of made a good case for Fiziev. I thought I was going to have to mention a lot of those points, but you've kind of already covered it, and then you just sort of like put him like a lamb to the slaughter under the Torres KO pick. Yeah, I see it maybe slightly differently. I think we're all different, seeing different shades of grey anyway. There's no one's going to come here and say they're going to be markedly surprised if Manuel Torres doesn't get the round one finish, because basically his whole career is round one finishes. This man is like Tom Aspinall, I guess, is a good comparator. Like his average fight time is 2 minutes, so you just don't know what it's like when he gets drawn out, or when he fights someone who is what shall I say, a level up. I think Rafa Fiziev is an elite striker, as Josh mentioned, and his level of competition has been far beyond Manuel Torres. So you can see here that I'm on the Fiziev money line. And for me, I can't be confident in Fiziev and tell you he's going to win this fight. What I can say is I'm confident that on the money lines, the way that it stacked up 50-50, the value is on Fiziev. So for me, it's like a system play. So every now and then you get these opportunities. I'd say the last system play that I came across, the last two, was obviously the Gan Pereira. Like I didn't know what Pereira would be like at heavyweight, but I suspected that he would be slower, and I suspected that he wouldn't necessarily adapt very quickly. So that was kind of a obligatory play on the 50-50 again, money line for Gan. And then before that, it was Curtis Blaze and Josh Hokit, which didn't work out in my favor with Hokit winning that, just because Hokit being I guess another analogous fighter who had very short fights and finishing everyone in round one. You just don't know what they're like when they're extended. So I kind of get Josh's take about the KO could come later, but I also probably lean more with Will that if it's not an early finish, then I think the value is with Fiziev for the reasons that Josh stated. So I think you both I'm kind of in between both what you said. So for me, I see Rafa having the wherewithal to survive round one, and then beyond that, he can ask question marks of Torres. And people are saying, "Oh, this fight just can't go the distance." I mean, we just don't know. We don't know how Torres will react to being in a longer fight. I tried to find tape of Torres fighting he's got a decision fight. I think a split decision loss. I think so. I can't even tell you what this guy looks like outside of round one. He is a wrecking ball. But as you say, Fiziev will have seen all types of strikers in his career. He's probably got 70+ bouts in his career because he had a Muay Thai career before he entered MMA. So that's good and bad. It's good from a sort of experience perspective. It's bad from a wear and tear perspective. And I think you've both pointed out the obvious wear and tear on Fiziev is going to be much higher than Torres. For me, there's just question marks over Torres. So I agree with you guys. If you're going to play Torres, you may as well go for a KO prop or a round one prop. I may even take that as a hedge because I'm exposed on the money line to Fiziev. I think I mentioned this when I played Gan. I said, I might take Pereira to win by knockout 1, 2, or 3. I didn't in the end because actually I felt pretty confident that the read was value was on Gan, and I didn't want to I just didn't want to play the hedge. Here I'm more tempted to play that round one finish just because Torres is so lethal in that first round. But at the same time, I'm thinking, you know what, this fight could get extended and Torres could get the round 2 or the round 3. For instance, he could hurt Fiziev early and then not finish him. I think Fiziev, despite getting knocked out by Huffy, he's pretty durable. I think another thing that wasn't mentioned is he's got pretty good range management. I think he's going to be the faster fighter. He's definitely going to be at a huge size and reach disadvantage. Well, not huge. You can see it's a couple of inches in the height, a couple of inches in the reach, as you see on screen. So that worries me. And it is a case of mind your P's and Q's. But yeah, if you want to talk about the people that Fiziev has fought, I mean, you already mentioned it. He has gone 6 rounds with the current incumbent lightweight champion and hurt him. He staggered Gaethje. It was worth mentioning, the kick speed of Fiziev is pretty unreal. So I think he has a lot of weapons. Torres does have those nasty elbows in the clinch, and he walks forward. You know, we've seen him flatlined by Ignacio Bahamondes, so we don't know much about his durability as well. We don't know if over more than 5 minutes how he's going to eat the body kicks from Fiziev, eat the calf kicks from Fiziev. So in terms of like the value at the money lines, I think the value is on Fiziev, but I absolutely wouldn't begrudge anyone going for a round one or just a general KO prop. So I think there's like you say, that it's hard to be certain about what will happen in the fight. I only feel confident that if this fight gets extended, then the value is going to be on Fiziev.
All right, here we go. I pretty much almost fought Will physically here to take this fight, only because we both like this fight, and I think that's mostly due to the underdog of Michal here, or Oleksiejczuk, whichever one is easier to say. But let me state the case for both fighters here. So, in almost every single Abus Magomedov fight, he tends to start fast. He's pretty much like I don't know, an inexperienced porn star who goes fast and then doesn't anymore. I expect that first round to be predominantly Abus moving forward, wrestling, trying to do anything to overwhelm Michal in on the feet or on the ground. Now that is the extent of what he's good at. I mean, I know that sounds cruel. I know that sounds like I'm very one-sided, but if you look at all of his fights, he's pretty much just a first-round fighter with second and third round sparring. Like, if you want to really call it that, like he can fight in those rounds, but not as good as he can in the first. That's where I expect Michal or Oleksiejczuk to step in. See, let me start that one again. I think that Oleksiejczuk, ever since becoming a fighting nerds fighter for the sake of calling him a fighting nerds fighter, even though he's Polish and most fighting nerds fighters are Brazilian, I expect him to know what's coming for him. Like, he is going to be overwhelmed in the first round because that's how Abus fights. But afterwards, he should be fine. I mean, we saw Abus do exceptionally well against Joe Pyfer. And as we know now, Joe Pyfer is a reasonably good fighter. Like, we did doubt him before the Izzy fight, and he pretty much did well. And maybe that's due to Izzy being in a weird spot in his career, or maybe that's just due to Pyfer being very good. But either way, for Abus to bully Pyfer that much in the first round tells you pretty much the story of how well Abus fights in that first round. Afterwards, though, he looked like a man that went through a marathon, pretty much. He looked destroyed. He's if I can recall this correctly, he was mostly on the back foot, but that's because Pyfer is a very aggressive fighter. He had a very wide guard, and typically when we see Magomedov fight, his guard's more tight and intense. He springs into action on the feet. He's more prepared for a fight, really. But in that second round against Pyfer, Magomedov looked like he didn't want to be there anymore. And I feel like that's going to be a similar story here. Now, I'm not saying Oleksiejczuk is going to walk him down as easily as Pyfer did, but I will say, with a perhaps mild amount of confidence here, that Oleksiejczuk's boxing is going to shine and the volume is going to add up in those second and third rounds, especially if he targets the body of Magomedov. Now, Oleksiejczuk is not a headhunter. He's very technical when it comes to targeting his opponent's body, so to speak. Like, he knows how to open up the defense. And if he sees Magomedov on the back foot, gasping for air, wishing he had that Greg Hardy, you saw that approved puffer that Greg Hardy used, which I still fucking laugh at. I expect Oleksiejczuk to just walk him down, use his boxing, attack the liver, and just further sap the cardio and strength and whatever of Magomedov. But the issue about that is we don't know how much that first round will take out of Oleksiejczuk, because firstly, Oleksiejczuk is going to defend takedowns a lot. I expect a lot of takedown offense from Abus, and as we know, if there's a lot of counter wrestling, that could bust out the arms of a boxer, and the boxer obviously needs their freaking arms to box. So that first round is going to have me intrigued. I'm not fully sold on Oleksiejczuk here. Now, mind you, I did pick him. I did do all the bets and whatever for Oleksiejczuk to win here, but that's because I feel like in a longer duration fight, he would do better than Abus, over those 3 rounds. But I am very concerned about how quote unquote busted his arms are going to be after potentially defending that wrestling output from Abus early on in that first round. People are expecting Abus to walk through Oleksiejczuk. I understand that narrative. Whenever you see a first round fighter fight well, people think momentum is a thing and all that shit. They won the first round, so maybe the second round's going to still have them winning and all that, whatever, all that stuff. I disagree simply because Oleksiejczuk is just experienced in these long 3-round fights, and he knows what's going to come for him. I just am a bit cautious about how badly his arms are going to be busted from the wrestling of Magomedov here. But betting wise, or whatever my bets were, I have this fight going over 2.5 rounds simply because I think Oleksiejczuk is going to survive the fight. Whether or not he's going to win, that's a whole different matter. But I also have him to win because, you got to pick a dog in these fights or in these cards. And in my opinion, there's no better dog than Oleksiejczuk. Like it's got to be written in law somewhere to take him as a dog whenever you can. So that's my pick. That's my go. Will, you wanna talk about this or?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, the first thing to mention is that you're spot on about Michal being a popular dog because he's no longer the underdog. The line has sort of flipped in that it's now pretty much pick 'em, but most sites are actually leaning towards Michal having the slightest of advantages there. So yeah, looks like we both identified a nice underdogs that the market agrees with. I say we because Michal is also my pick and also my bet. The reason being is that I understand why it's a close fight. I understand the line and I understand your fear, I suppose, of Abus's grappling. But there's always everything you just said, but there's also the potential that he doesn't grapple that much. He's a well-rounded fighter that he's not like a crotch sniffing wrestler. He can just decide he wants to strike, and if he does that, I think it gives Michal the opportunity to have a bit more of a comfortable one. So I'm not saying that that's the case. I do expect him to wrestle, but he might not. And if he doesn't, I think that's just an area of open space that will probably earn Michal a few percentage points in terms of winning probability, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just think that in terms of the striking, the process of one man really does lean towards the other's weaknesses, and that is Michal's body work and just general pressure, because we know Abus is a bit of a gas bag. And we know Michal can do 15 minutes. Obviously, that's 15 minutes against a striker. So I hear what you're saying, Josh, about the how he holds up if he's aggressively wrestled for round one. But then also another flip side point I would make to that one is Abus is not an elite finisher on the mat. We haven't really seen him do a whole lot of dangerous stuff when he has grounded his opponents and actually gotten that top control time. So if Abbas, so say for example, this fight does play out in the way that Josh is fearful of, in that there's a lot of wrestling and a lot of fighting for Abbas's control time in that opening round. I don't feel super confident that he's going to finish Michal. I know Michal's pretty bad from like a grappling perspective, so really you shouldn't be confident he's going to survive anything. But again, more time training at the Fighting Nerds, you've got to think he's improving a little bit there. Will it be enough? I don't know. But again, it's not like Oleksiejczuk is facing a very capable submission artist, like Kevin Holland or something. So if they do have a wrestling heavy round one, and I'm right that Abbas doesn't finish him, is that detrimental to Abbas? And I think so, because I think that the longer this fight lasts, no matter how you imagine it going, I think it's going to be intense from the start. So if Michal doesn't get finished, I think Abbas is going to burn himself out going for the kill, if that makes sense. So for me, I just think that the longevity of Michal Oleksiejczuk is a very big convincing factor in this fight, and therefore the most convincing factor. I didn't understand why he was an underdog. I think he should have been favorite. I understand the Abbas grappling angle, but I just think you've got the wrong guy in terms of, when you see Lord Michal Oleksiejczuk is fighting, you think, right, is the opponent going to grapple him? And for all of most of Michal's losses, that's the correct angle to immediately look at. But when using that filter, I don't really look at Abbas Magomedov and go, oh yeah, there's a guy who's going to get him. It's not like he's fighting like Brendan Allen or something. If he was, obviously Brendan Allen would be like minus 500 or something, or maybe not, but 400, 300. Where I just think that Abbas is not the guy to trust to execute this kind of plan against Michal. And then when you remove the grappling from the conversation, for me, I think it's a very clear winner. Well, it should be, obviously, they're going to strike, so there's dangerousness involved. Abbas does hit kind of hard. I mean, he burst onto the scene with like a super quick KO, didn't he? That's why they elevated him into a status he wasn't ready for. But yeah, I just think that Michal's pressure, pace, volume, and body work specifically make him one of my favorite fighters to watch. It's a bit niche, but he's been one of my favorite fighters in the UFC for like 7 years. And I think this is giving him somebody with subpar cardio is exactly what Michal wants, and I think that's the main talking point of this fight, not the grappling. So yeah, Michal's the pick for me. I bet him at plus 120, I think, and he's now like minus 115, minus 110. So yeah, happy with the line movement, but yeah, it's a close one. Yeah. Dom, what do you think? You got any contrarian views, or are you also leaning to the Oleksiejczuk side?
Yeah, so initially when I looked at this fight, I just pre-tape thought Abbas would be, the favorite, and he was, obviously. And as you mentioned, Will, in some places he is still a favorite, and some places it's flipped, actually. Michal is the favorite, and maybe that movement will continue, and I kind of get it. But I think from money line perspective, I think actually I'm going to maintain that it's close, right? So I have actually played the Michal Oleksiejczuk money line. That was after reviewing some of the tape last night, but this morning when I woke up, I just thought to myself, like Abbas, he is a one-round guy, as you guys mentioned. He like can beat anyone for one round. Like he took the first round of Sean Strickland. He took the first round of Joe Pyfer, because we were talking about this fight, and Josh had reviewed the Pyfer fight. It didn't look terrible, the Pyfer fight as a look for Abbas, because he reversed Pyfer from bottom in the first round and won that first round. But it is that thing about the gassing. I think that was what convinced me yesterday watching the tape. I was like, I don't know how you can back this guy unless he's going to get an early finish. And I do think that there is going to be some threat in round one. Yeah, I think the problem with Abbas is I don't trust him necessarily to get an early finish here. I do think that he's probably going to win round one, and I think he's probably going to aim to take Michal Oleksiejczuk to the mat, and Oleksiejczuk will have to survive an early kind of grappling onslaught. So I think it's touch and go from the money line perspective in that sense, because I think you can just expect Abbas to be 1-0 up, and then that second round is going to be pretty greasy. But one thing I think we can bank on, on the Michal side, is the cardio being better for sure. I know he has had issues in the past with cardio, and people have pointed even to recent fight with Marc Andre where he slowed down. But to be honest, he didn't look that bad in round 3 to me. Marc Andre had a good round 2 and won that round off him. And I think, I can see why people like Abbas. I think the level of competition, and he's fighting much better fighters. And if you gave him Michal's last 3 opponents, he would beat all of those and be on a 3-fight win streak. So, but I just think that the issue here is I've never seen Abbas look good in round 3. So I watched the Pereira fight back, and it was a low activity fight. Like, Pereira didn't look good, wasn't throwing at all, and Abbas just looked like tired as hell in the 3rd round. And I just think that that's going to give opportunities for Michal to, if he needs a finish, get the finish. There's a high probability, that he might be 2 rounds down going to the 3rd round, but I think he'll throw the kitchen sink at Abbas. And so I think there are many ways to attack this fight. I've got no issue with taking a plus money line on Michal, but right now where it's 50-50, even though I bet it, now I kind of regret it. I think 50-50 is probably where it should be. I don't think that Michal Oleksiejczuk should be a favorite when he's likely going to drop the 1st round. That's just, that's just the way I see it, because, Abbas Magomedov is a front runner. So if he gets the takedown and just lay in praise, or Michal doesn't go for the finish, then what if he gets that takedown early in round 2? Then you'd be sweating it right on the money line. So plus money, fine. But yeah, even money, I didn't like that decision for myself. I think the options for playing Michal in a more profitable sense, I've just thought about it really as you guys were speaking, is to play the decision no action. I couldn't really believe that decision no action is like plus 150 on Michal. I was like, there's no way that Abbas has more finishing upside here than Michal. I might live to regret that if he subs in round 1, but so I think I'm going to switch to the decision no action on Michal. But also I'm going to just have a flyer on the round 2, round 3 finish, just based on the tape that Abbas, I think he's too big, because in this day and age, cardio is not an excuse. You shouldn't really be flailing or failing in rounds 2 and 3 with your cardio, because you have access to more supplements and so forth, unless you're just cutting too much weight. We've seen this time and again when fighters are too big for the weight class, their output is poor. Their cardio is poor, and it's nothing to do with any supplements they're taking. It's just the weight cut is compromising them. And I think Abbas Magomedov is an absolutely huge middleweight, which is why he gets away with winning round 1, because he can physically bully you. He's pretty explosive, and that's why he gasses. You look at the 2 guys on screen, you can see who's the sort of more well-muscled and athletic fighter. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I think Michal wears him down over time. He's got to survive an early onslaught. And potentially will be finishing Abbas in round 3, which is like plus, I think I found it at 13 or plus 1200. Round 2, I think round 2 is less likely, but I cover myself playing round 2 as well. So I play round 2, round 3, Michal, and I'll switch the money line bet to a decision no action. Yeah, that's how I see this. And yeah, this is a banger fight here between Bekzat Almakhan and Jean Matsumoto in the bantamweight division. I was surprised to see this just a 2nd fight of the night, because I think Jean Matsumoto is a prospect now, and they've put him in front of some really good names like Rob Font, and he fought Farid Basharat in his last fight. So he's fought some pretty good fighters. So yeah, interesting positioning on the card, but I think this is one of the better fights. It's one of the more competitive fights, and it's lined that way. So Jean Matsumoto is a minus 150 favorite. Bekzat Almakhan coming in as a plus 130 underdog. And both these guys are really well-rounded mixed martial artists. They can both grapple, they can both strike. I think they're both comfortable in all areas of MMA. They're kind of new breed MMA fighters. I'd say that Bekzat has fought the lower level of competition, generally speaking, because he fought the bad Tapura in his last fight. And I think, the money line is more or less where it should be, but I just think there's more upside here for Jean Matsumoto. So Jean Matsumoto, like I said, he had a fight with Farid Basharat, and it was a very competitive fight. He lost a split decision to Farid Basharat, and he's the better Basharat brother, by the way. So they both fought brothers recently. Jean Matsumoto fought the better Basharat, and Bekzat fought the worst Tapuria. And in those 2 fights, you see their strengths and weaknesses. So with Jean Matsumoto, he was a bit hittable in that fight. So Farid Basharat was landing pretty easily to him with straight jab down the middle. And Jean Matsumoto was putting a lot of pressure, but couldn't really connect with Farid. And what we saw was Jean Matsumoto made the rounds close through grappling, offensive grappling, and managed to get a number of takedowns. I think 7 takedowns against Farid Basharat. And the narrative going into that fight, or the thinking, was that Farid Basharat was going to nullify the threat of Jean Matsumoto on the feet through takedowns, but it actually turned out the other way around. And it was a very close fight. I remember I bet on Jean Matsumoto in that fight. I think he was plus 200. And I really enjoyed watching the fight back, because obviously I find it interesting now because Farid Basharat will fight Ethan Ewing. So it was good sort of tape study for that. And I came to appreciate Farid Basharat as a really, really well-rounded fighter. He did slow down in the third round, Farid Basharat, that is, and Jean Matsumoto was there in the third round with his offensive grappling and landing a lot more on Farid Basharat. So make of that what you will. I think Farid Basharat is kind of a front runner. So I think against Ethan Ewing, he's probably going to win the early rounds. But Jean Matsumoto took that fight over, and I think that was a 5-round fight. Jean Matsumoto would likely have made, could have won a split decision, say, over 5 rounds. So, I think Jean Matsumoto he's top 10 material in the bantamweight division. With Bekzat, I think there's more questions here. So Topuria, Alexandre Topuria, basically dominated him, just pieced him up. The way he did that was put a lot of pressure on him from the start. So boxing pressure, not many kicks, just boxing. Bekzat was resigned to, circling on the outside, trying to find, what he normally does. He tries to find one big punch. That's what he did to Brad Katona in his penultimate fight. He just floored Brad Katona with an uppercut. And that was particularly impressive because Brad Katona never been finished, never been KO'd. So I think that's really the story of this fight. It's Bekzat. Can he do enough damage with his, his one-off punches, or the odd punch here or there, or will Jean Matsumoto, take him down, control him, put together combos on him? I understand why Bekzat is a popular underdog this week. I can definitely see that, and he's fighting kind of like at home. He's the home fighter, but I think Jean Matsumoto is the better put together fighter at this point in their careers. They're both young. I think they're both in the same age. Bekzat is around 28 years old, and Jean Matsumoto, I think, is a year younger. So I think this is a close fight. More times than it's not. But I think that sort of a window for it not being a close fight, I lean more to Jean Matsumoto. So I think Jean Matsumoto is the side. I placed a money line bet on him. And to be honest, I like him to win via decision. I think that this, if this ends early, I think it's more likely it's going to be a Bekzat finish. So similarly to the Abbas fight that we discussed, I guess you could, the main event, you could cover yourself with a Bekzat round 1 or round 2. But I won't necessarily do that. Incidentally, though, as we were speaking, or as you guys were speaking on this fight or the last one, I actually did place the Torres round 1, round 2, just as a kind of a hedge, because I have the money line exposure to Fiziev. Anyway, back to this fight. Which one of you guys would like to sort of give an opinion? Anyone particularly like Almakhan? I think that would be interesting to hear some sort of arguments in his favor.
I'll let Will go first because I believe he's the first to go through the betting stuff. So, yeah, Will, go on.
I have absolutely nothing for this one. I haven't researched it, basically. I like Jean Matsumoto. I think obviously it's a bit of a red flag that his fights always seem to go really close. I think he's got 3 split decisions in a row in his last 3, maybe. That's a great thing if he's a dog, but a scary thing if he's a favorite. I know obviously each fight there is an isolated event, but I like to think there's usually no smoke without fire, and sometimes fighters punch up and punch down based upon the competition they're facing, and I think this is that might be something that Matsumoto suffers from. So kind of a scary idea of having him as a favorite. I mean, he's only minus 150, isn't he? Whereas, Almakhan, I couldn't tell you anything off the top of my head. I haven't had time to research it. So, yeah, Josh, straight over to you.
I like this fight because it's a grappler versus a striker fight, and these fights always intrigue me. But I think there's more than meets the eye here. First of all, I will say that I did pick Matsumoto to win this fight because I am a Matsumoto fan, if you want to call it that. I've always enjoyed his style, and his win over Farid really cemented that. Or his loss. Okay, his loss cemented it, but also it looked good, if that makes any sense. It looked competitive enough for me to be like, oh yeah, he's got a decent chance next time, because we're seeing new skill sets from him. We're seeing new things from Matsumoto that we don't really expect. And as Dom said, we expected Farid to be the one wrestling, and Matsumoto did pretty much that. Flip the script. But anyway, it's pretty much going to go down as advertised, really. Either Almakhan's going to march forward and get the takedowns, or Matsumoto's going to keep it standing and use his Muay Thai to piece up Almakhan and keep the fight standing, really. But there is a bit of a slight thing here that I am curious about, and that's the logistics of this fight. So Almakhan obviously fights in Kazakhstan, so obviously it's just a hop, skip, and jump away from Baku, and Matsumoto has to travel a lot more. So I don't know if Matsumoto has made it to Baku in a reasonable time. Normally Dom keeps up with that, so I'll let him reply afterwards. But basically what I'm trying to say here is that Matsumoto, given his evolutions as a fighter, despite his Farid loss recently, I just want to see more of him, really. And maybe I have rose-tinted glasses about him, if that's the right terminology here. Like, I like him more than I like Almakhan, that's for sure. But it's just the logistics of it that make me a little bit concerned here. And here's a mildly fun fact: if he hasn't changed gyms, if Matsumoto hasn't changed gyms, the only other UFC fighter in his team is Ariane Carnelossi. So that's a terrible sign for him and his future. So hopefully he changes gyms to a better team, because if your only UFC friend or pal or whatever in the gym is a fucking Carnelossi, then you're in trouble, pal. So yeah, Dom, my question to you, if you can remember, was whether or not you know if Matsumoto has made it to Baku in time and whatever. So do you have any gossip about that? Any news?
Yes, I do, and it shows that how long we've been working together, that we know how each other's minds work. Because the one thing I omitted that I meant to say, and really that's because I did it from the top of my head without notes. And the note I made was that my main concern here is exactly what Josh said, is the time being left to adapt. Because I checked, so he was in Vegas 2 weeks ago. I think it was for the Carnelossi fight, actually, at the Apex. So yeah, again, that's kind of worrying, isn't it? That that's his pal is Carnelossi, but hopefully he has other people he trains with. Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago, but it's a 19-hour round trip to a 19-hour journey to Baku. So there's obviously a flight change there. You can't fly direct, and a huge time difference between Vegas and Baku. So yeah, he was in Vegas 2 weeks ago. I don't think he left straight away, obviously. So I would have hoped that he would have left shortly after. There's nothing on his Instagram to indicate when he arrived in Baku, but I imagine because of where he is in his career, he's probably cutting it a little bit fine. Maybe he arrived a week in advance. When you're adjusting to a new climate, a dry climate like Baku, and you've got to deal with sleep changes, yeah, it's not ideal. That is the one thing that I forgot to mention, and thanks for reminding me. Yeah, I'm not sure when he arrived, but I'd err on the side of that would be something that concerns me. If he has a flat performance, it could be due to that. But at the end of the day, it's like you said, we like him here for many reasons, and we don't have any evidence to the contrary that he's not arriving in time. So it's not something that I could use to change my mind. But it was like a very, very small inkling that, okay, you're in Vegas 2 weeks out. That's not great. You should be focusing on your own fight, going to Baku as early as possible. Ideally, you would go to Baku, 2 weeks in advance, to be honest. Because I remember when Dominic Reyes fought Ulberg, yeah, he arrived 3 weeks early in Australia. Didn't help him, poor guy. But so that's, I think when you've got the money and you've got the team, I think going as early as possible is the best option. So yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah, so over to our bets. I've kind of spoken a few times about how I'm just not that enthusiastic about this card. considering the play on Manuel Torres, don't quite know what I'm going to land on there, but it'll be like a round 1 or round 2 or just round 1 bet there, something quite small, half a unit probably. Shara Magomedov, I've got a 1 unit bet with that aforementioned Navajo Sterling parlay at like -135. I wish I'd put more on it, but I had bets on Sterling anyway, so I didn't want to like overexpose. And Michal Oleksiejczuk, whose name I've spelt wrong there. I've got 1.5 units on him. There's still time for me to add more bets just because, we're recording on a Thursday, so we've got like 2 days until the card. But I might not. I think we've also got a break next week, so I don't have any researching to do for a bit of time. So I might try and find some more bets, but yeah, nothing jumps out at me for this card. I'm really struggling here. Dom, what have you got for this one?
Yeah, like you, struggling. I don't think there's a lot of great options unless you're really willing to do a lot of tape. And time-wise, it just wasn't possible this week. As I already talked about, Fiziev, 3 units might be a bit large, but it's a system play. Some of these you're going to win, some of them you're going to lose. Overall, if you hit more than 50% at this rate, you're going to be in profit. So Fiziev to survive the first round and give the vet lesson to Torres, who isn't that young. We didn't talk about that. He's 31 himself, so it's not like he's a spring chicken. He hasn't got much time on his side in terms of climbing the division. He desperately needs to win. This could be a setback for him. One that I'm sure he can overcome even if he loses. Sean Matsumoto, 1.5 units on the money line. -150 is definitely very close to probably fair value, but I think you could make a case for -200, and obviously it depends how the fight plays out. I think he has more tools in his arsenal, more ways to control Bekzat over the 3 rounds. Have this kind of square parlay, which I kind of regret. I'm okay with the Yakgayev side because I think I got Yakgayev before his line got completely ballooned. I think he was like -400 when I took him, and it was like -650, which seems a bit ludicrous. Ruziboyev is also known as Fraudzaboyev, so I would definitely a bit wary about the line on Ruziboyev. It's only 1 unit on that parlay. We talked about Mikey O. I do have a play on his money line, but I'm going to switch it to the decision no action and go with I think at this price of like 10 to 1 on him to finish late, I think it's fantastic value. I mean, from what I can see, his cardio has markedly improved from his earlier stint in his career. I think he was actually in his 2nd stint in the UFC, so he was cut for like a while. He didn't actually have a fight outside the UFC, and then he re-signed a contract. So in his 2nd stint, anyway, in his recent run, his cardios look much better, and I think, as Will mentioned, that's going to be a decisive factor here. So give me Mikey O to get a late finish over Abbas. What have you got, Josh?
I have the usual here. I've got the parlay and a few alt bets, but I also have a few more things to say. So give me a minute to say those things after I say what's written there. So parlay, Matsumoto, Almakhan over 2.5 rounds. I think that one's a given. I mean, we all expect Matsumoto to negate the wrestling of Almakhan, and if he can't, then he's going to survive anyway, I think. Donchenko is one of the hot prospects from Ukraine. I could talk about him all day because he is a fun fighter to watch, but I won't because we are short on time. Yakgayev KO sub double chance is simply there because Yakgayev is a heavy favorite over his opponent, who I forgot. I think it's Walker, Juicy Boy, or whatever it's called. KO sub is simply just there because odds, maybe. I mean, just make it prettier than just a heavy favorite. And then Almakhan Johnson round 3 starts. Yes, that one somewhat collides with the ultimate, as you can see down below there, the KO round 2 or 3. But I still think that Almakhan is going to push Johnson against the cage and eventually make round 3 start. That's what we want. Now, ultimates there, as you can see, Almakhan via points, maybe depending on odds. I don't know what the odds are. Sportsbet is slower than a piece of shit. And I feel like we're going to see maybe 4 point something, maybe 5 point something. I don't know. But either way, if Almakhan is going to win, it's going to be by points. Fajeda via KO round 1 is something that I always do whenever he fights, simply because he likes to finish in the first round. He's a 2-pump chump kind of guy, and we like that in Fajeda. So there's that. Johnson via KO round 2 or round 3 is simply there because I feel like whenever Johnson fights, he builds up data in the first round, and as we know, he's very good at countering on a retreat, and maybe Almakhan is going to walk into that, and maybe it'll hit. The odds for that are actually pretty nice. It's at, well, when I placed it, it's at 15.00, so I was happy. I am happy still. And then Fiziev via K round 2, 3, or 4. That's if Torres doesn't get him out of there in the first, or that's if Fiziev doesn't get him out of there in the first, as obvious. Now, the other things I want to say here is very quick, very short. I'll try and make them brief. I got a 4-leg parlay money line on some dumbass favorites here. Donchenko, Yakyayev, Sadikov, and Magomedov. So that's a 4-leg parlay for 2.67 odds. Not too happy about that, but it's whatever. It's probably free money. I've got a 2-leg parlay on the 2 dogs I like here, Oleksiejczuk and Torres. The odds for Oleksiejczuk when I bet them were 2.19. It's shifted now, so I'm happy about that. And then the Torres odds were 2.06. That's also shifted, so I'm happy about that. The overall odds for those 2 legs there are 4.51, so let's go. I've also got a really funny, I'm an idiot kind of parlay here. The following fights to, end in a finish, pretty much, or doesn't go the distance, whatever you want to call them. Ruziboev, Polyaev, I feel like that's a banger anyway, and both of those fighters are pretty, Yakyayev, Walker pretty much coincides with my parlay leg over there. Aliskerov, Hayder, that one also pretty much coincides with the alt bet there, as you can see. And then, there's 2 more there, sorry. Sadikov, Camilo, I just feel like Sadikov is prime for a finish because Camilo is just not really that good. And then lastly, Fiziev, Torres, and that one's a predictable finish, in my opinion. So all of those 5 fights there I just mentioned, inside the distance, there's going to be a finish, and that's it. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot more bets there from Josh to consider. And we got a break week after this, and then we've got the UFC 329, which I'm sure all of us are looking forward to. These kind of in-between cards can be a little bit challenging sometimes to find the spots, but I wish everyone good luck with their bets this weekend, and look forward to breaking down UFC 329 with Josh and Will on the next episode.